Imagine you've built this state-of-the-art supercomputer, right? And it's designed to just perfectly predict the weather.
Right. You fed it all the data.
Exactly. Decades of historical data, atmospheric pressure models, humidity indexes, the works. And in testing, it's flawless. But then today, the sensors start sending back data that says, well, it's raining upwards.
Which is obviously impossible.
Right. So what does the machine do? Does it trust its sensors, which are registering absolute physical nonsense? Or does it trust its programming, which says upward rain is impossible?
Yeah.
Today, we actually have the answer to a scenario very much like that. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's a really fascinating one today.
Yeah, we are opening up a purely data-driven observation log from Team AI Lab. This is dated May 11th, 2026. And we're looking at a real-time stress test of two opposing quantitative philosophies trying to survive an environment that is just aggressively rejecting their underlying logic.
It's a profound data set, really. I mean, we are getting a look under the hood of systems that are experiencing what we kind of call algorithmic fragility.
Algorithmic fragility.
Yeah, it's that exact moment when an algorithm's historical edge, the thing that makes it work, suddenly becomes an active liability.
Wow, okay. But before we get into the actual mechanics of these failing models, let me just be incredibly clear right out of the gate. I need to set some strict ground rules for you, the listener, before we go any further.
Definitely necessary here.
Yeah, what we are doing today is a pure exploration of algorithm behavior and simulation results under highly specific controlled conditions. This is an objective observation log.
Right, we're just looking at the data.
Exactly. There is absolutely no investment advice happening here today. None. No buy recommendations, no sell recommendations, and zero promises of future profits. We are essentially, we're like scientists looking at an AI ant farm, observing how the ants react when somebody violently shakes the glass.
That framing is essential, I think. We are here to observe the structural mechanics of these systems. We're looking at how code reacts to chaos, not mapping out a financial strategy for anyone listening.
Right, okay. So, with that vital disclaimer established, let's introduce the two competing philosophies that Team AI Lab has deployed into this current environment.
The two teams of ants, basically.
Exactly, the two teams. So on one side, we have Team Mountain Climbers, and their strategy is rooted in finding equilibrium.
Right, equilibrium.
So if we translate that from lab jargon into actual financial theory, these represent mean reversion algorithms, right?
Correct. A mean reversion model, it basically operates on the assumption that extreme price movements are anomalies, and eventually things will snap back to a historical average.
Like a rubber band.
Exactly, like a rubber band. So the mountain climbers are designed to find that unmoving, safe average in the middle of a violent storm. They essentially want the quietest part of the room.
Okay, and then on the other side, we have Team Wave Riders. Their philosophy is defined in the logs as surging force tracking.
Surging force tracking, yeah.
Which is quite the name. In quantitative terms, this is momentum or trend following logic, right? They do not want quiet.
Not at all.
They actively attempt to harness the violent momentum of rough waves. They see a price moving aggressively in one direction, assume a trend is forming, and just try to ride it.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at two different sets of code. We're looking at two fundamentally opposite philosophies of surviving market hostility.
Opposite ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. One seeks stillness and statistical normalcy, and the other, well, it tries to weaponize the turbulence itself.
So we have the seekers of stillness and the chasers of momentum, and we have the environment they're currently testing in. So let's look at the season standings from the May 11th log. Both teams are experiencing a massive, abnormal divergence compared to the main market indices.
It's a huge gap.
Yeah, and for context, the benchmark indices they are tracking against are the Nikkei 225 and the TOPIX, which are the major barometers for the Japanese stock market.
Right, the standard measuring sticks. And the gaps we are seeing between the algorithms and those benchmarks today are just severe.
Severe is a good word. Let's put the actual numbers on the table. Team Mountain Climbers, the mean reversion models, they are lagging the Nikkei 225 by 3.4 points and the TPX by 1.6 points.
That's significant.
Yeah. But then Team Wave Riders, the momentum chasers, are trailing the Nikkei by 6.0 points and the TPX by 4.1 points. Now wait, I want to pause here for a second because the log keeps referring to points. Are we talking about basic percentage points here, or is this something else entirely?
Good question. No, it's not straightforward percentages. It's a proprietary scoring metric used by Team AI Lab.
Okay, so a custom score.
Right. It's used to measure outperformance, or what they call alpha. So without getting bogged down in the lab's exact mathematical formulas, just think of a point as a standardized unit of deviation from that baseline index.
Okay, I see.
So a lag of negative 6.0 points against the Nikkei is not just some minor calibration error. It represents a really profound breakdown in the core logic.
Okay, let's unpack this, because a 6.0 point lag sounds like the machine is just, well, fundamentally broken.
Yeah, essentially.
I mean, it's like playing a board game where the rulebook literally catches fire midway through. If both the safe equilibrium strategy and the aggressive momentum strategy are detaching this severely from the actual market movement, it tells me the storm is just too chaotic to measure. The indices are moving, but the algorithms can't figure out how they are moving.
Yeah, it tells us that the current market environment lacks both stability, which is what hooks the climbers, and it lacks sustained, readable trends.
Which destroys the wave riders.
Exactly, it destroys them. Because algorithms, you have to remember, they are trained on vast data sets of historical market behavior. They learn patterns.
Right, they look at what happened before.
Yeah, but what happens when you feed an algorithm 10 years of perfectly normal market data, and then day 3,651 is just this massive black swan event with unprecedented volatility?
Upward rain.
Yes. Upward rain. The patterns just don't apply anymore. The algorithm is basically trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, but at lightning speed.
Wait, okay, if the environment is this hostile, right, and the algorithms are trailing the indices this badly, why doesn't the system just, hit a kill switch?
Just turn it off.
Yeah, why not just turn them all off and wait for the storm to pass? Why keep losing points?
Well, because turning them off deprives the lab of the absolute most valuable thing in quantitative research, which is failure data.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you don't learn much when the market is easy and your models are working perfectly. You learn where your armor is thin during an abnormal reality. Team AI Lab is actively letting them run specifically to measure the depth and speed of the failure.
Okay, that makes sense. Which actually brings us to the draft. Because these teams have a daily scouting process, right? It's like a mechanism to deploy new troops into the storm.
Yes, the 9.0 JST draft.
Right. Every day at 9:00 a.m. Japan Standard Time, the overarching system scans the market and looks for what they call new forces. These are new algorithmic units whose specific logic might actually have an edge in the current conditions.
The draft is effectively a real-time environmental toxicity sensor.
The toxicity sensor.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And the May 11th sensor reading is just brutal. I mean, Team Mountain Climbers scouting logic analyzed the entire landscape and drafted exactly 0 new units.
Zero.
Nothing. And Team Wave Riders scanned the exact same landscape and found exactly 1 single unit whose logic proved worthy of being deployed.
And this raises a really important question about the threshold for deployment. Because an automated scouting system is scanning thousands of potential mathematical setups.
Right, so many possibilities.
Yeah, and returning a flat 0 for the climbers highlights just how completely unforgiving the specific session is.
It's just toxic.
Highly toxic. For an algorithm to draft a unit, it has to calculate a high probability of success based on those recognized patterns. So by drafting 0 new forces, the mountain climber system is mathematically declaring that true equilibrium just does not exist today.
Wow, it's just flat out refusing to send new troops out into an environment it can't map. But wait, what about the troops that are already out there? I mean, if the scouting logic says do not enter, what happens to the algorithms that were drafted, say, a week ago? Let's look at the main forces, the active roster. The log notes, they are actually mandated to survive what the lab calls a 10-session tracking protocol.
Yeah, that protocol is crucial to understand here. It means these units cannot simply retreat when the weather gets bad.
They're locked in.
Once deployed, they have a mandated operational window of 10 trading sessions. They must execute their logic, process the inputs, and take positions based on their programming for that entire duration.
Oh man, so they are completely locked in. Right now, looking at the logs, there are 15 mountain climber units and 17 wave rider units out there, just taking the absolute brunt of this logic-defying market.
They're stuck out there.
And based on what we just established about the indices pulling away, these 32 units are essentially trapped in a malfunctioning simulation.
They really are. And we need to look at the mechanism of how they are failing, specifically the wave riders, because momentum algorithms fail very dramatically in directionless volatility.
Directionless volatility.
Yeah, we call it whipsawing.
Okay, I really want to understand whipsawing. Because if the momentum guys are bleeding out so badly, you, the listener, really need to know how that happens mechanically.
Okay, so imagine a thermostat. It's programmed to turn on the air conditioning when a room gets hot. Right.
Basic logic.
But the room isn't actually getting hot. The thermometer itself is just shaking violently up and down. So the AC turns on, then it instantly turns off, then it instantly turns on again.
Oh, geez.
And it does this until the motor just burns out. That is whipsawing. A WaveWriter algorithm sees a sudden spike in price and volume, and its logic says, hey, this is a trend, buy. So it executes the trade.
But it's a trap.
Exactly. It's not a trend at all. It's just random, violent noise. So a millisecond later, the price plummets. The algorithm's risk management logic kicks in immediately and says, trend failed, sell to stop the loss.
So it takes a loss.
It takes a small loss. But then the price spikes again, so it buys. Then it plummets, so it sells. It takes 20 small losses in a minute.
Oh, wow. I mean, for anyone listening who has ever tried to follow a GPS that loses its signal in a busy city, where it just rapidly recalculates, tells you to make a U-turn, then another U-turn until you are completely turned around and lost, you know exactly how these WaveWriter units feel right now.
That is a perfect mechanical analogy.
They are just aggressively following false signals over and over.
Yeah, and every single one of those U-turns costs the algorithm capital.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite all that whipsawing, despite the indices completely detaching from the underlying logic today, the observation log reveals this wild anomaly.
The survivors.
Yes. Out of those 15 locked-in mountain climbers, exactly 9 of them are miraculously holding positive points. And out of the 17 WaveWriters, exactly 9 of them are also holding positive points.
Which statistically is highly improbable. I mean, in an environment that the scouting mechanism deemed too toxic to even enter today, a slim majority of the actively deployed units have somehow found a way to maintain a positive standing.
I look at these 18 units, the 9 climbers and the 9 riders, it's kind of like lighthouses in the dark.
Lighthouses, yeah.
The rulebook is burned, the GPS is spinning out of control, and yet these specific adapters are standing firm.
And we really have to ask what those lighthouses are actually seeing, because they aren't relying on magic, Rice. They are executing code.
Just pure math.
Exactly. Whatever specific, highly nuanced parameters they were programmed with have somehow allowed them to map the unmappable. They are demonstrating that even within an overwhelmingly hostile environment, microscopic pockets of structural logic still exist.
You just have to be uniquely calibrated to find them.
Exactly. You have to be calibrated for the chaos.
But that begs the question, are the mean reversion lighthouses shining brighter than the momentum lighthouses? To answer that, we have to look at the season scorecard.
The final tally.
Right. This breaks down the final logs for the units that completed their 10-session mandated tracking protocol today. It tells a very decisive story about which philosophy is ultimately surviving the chaos better.
So let's break down those total season points. The scorecard splits into a daily score and a carryover balance, and that provides a really clear picture of cumulative damage versus cumulative resilience over the 10 sessions.
Okay, let's start with the mountain climbers, our equilibrium seekers. Despite the violent conditions today, they actually pulled off a daily score of positive 22.9 points.
That's incredibly strong.
Right. And when you add that to their existing carryover balance of positive 14.3 points, they finish with a very healthy total season score of positive 27.4 points.
And that daily score is a significant stabilization, especially when you consider that their scouting system drafted 0 new units today.
Yeah, they had no reinforcements.
Exactly. It means those 9 positive main forces, those lighthouses, are doing incredibly heavy mathematical lifting to keep the entire philosophy in the green.
They're carrying the team. But then we pivot to the WaveWriters, the momentum chasers. They only managed a daily score of positive 2.8 points today.
Barely anything.
Barely a blip. But it barely matters anyway, because they were dragging a massive anchor. They had a carryover balance of negative 29.1 points.
That's a deep hole to climb out of.
So even with today's tiny positive blip, they finished drowning with a total season score of negative 16.1 points.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the contrast in these final scores completely validates the mechanical failure we discussed earlier with the whipsawing.
The GPS U-turns.
Right. That negative 29.1 point carryover is essentially the mathematical scar tissue of catching bad waves over the last 10 sessions. The momentum strategy forces the algorithm to engage, it sees movement, and it attacks.
But in a directionless storm?
Attacking is fatal.
Wow. And conversely, the mountain climbers succeeded by doing the exact opposite. By seeking stillness, by requiring a very, very high statistical probability of mean reversion before committing any resources, they managed to protect their capital.
It's a masterclass in risk management, really.
It shows why sometimes doing nothing, or basically seeking the quietest part of the room, is actually the ultimate aggressive strategy when the environment is completely unpredictable.
And it fundamentally contextualizes that 9.00 JST draft. The climber system surveyed the storm and essentially said, look, we have 15 units out there. We are not deploying any more capital into this noise until true equilibrium returns.
They just shut the door.
They shut the door. But the rider system, which was bleeding points and desperate to offset that massive negative 29 carryover, well, it threw one new unit into the meat grinder,
Hoping for a miracle.
hoping it had the specific calibration to finally read the surging force correctly today.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have this incredibly dense log from May 11, 2026. We see the mountain climbers drastically outperforming the wave riders internally, but both philosophies are still lagging behind the overall Nikkei and TOPIX indices. We have a daily draft that essentially shut down due to hostile conditions. For someone trying to synthesize this, what is the real core takeaway of this experiment?
The core takeaway is understanding Team AI Lab's cold, forward-looking research stance.
Their stance.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very easy for an observer to look at the massive lag behind the Nikkei or the negative 16.1 season points for the wave riders and just call the entire simulation a failure.
Right, it looks like a loss on paper.
But in quantitative research, a broken model is not a failure. It is the baseline for evolution.
The baseline for evolution.
By meticulously documenting exactly where and how the wave riders whipsawed themselves into a negative 29-point carryover, the lab is gathering the exact coordinates of the blind spots in their trend-following logic.
So they basically needed the machine to break so they could figure out exactly where to weld the new armor.
Exactly. You cannot build a stormproof algorithm by only testing it on sunny days.
That's a great point.
The days the logic completely fails are actually the most valuable days in the entire dataset.
Which brings me back to our 18 lighthouses. Those 9 mountain climbers and 9 wave riders that miraculously held positive points while the fundamental rules of the market just completely broke down around them. The lab has a mandate to study failure, but they clearly also have a mandate to study these extreme outliers.
Oh, absolutely. Those 18 units are the proof of concept that adaptation is possible, even when the broader philosophy is actively failing.
It leaves you with a really profound thought to mull over. If these hyper-adapted algorithms manage to map the unmappable today, what will their logic look like when the storm finally clears?
That's the real question.
Will the microscopic pockets of structural logic they found today become the standard blueprint for tomorrow's reality? When Team AI Lab deploys the next generation of algorithms, I have to imagine they're all going to carry a little bit of the DNA from the lighthouses we observed today.
We will certainly be watching the future logs to see exactly how that DNA evolves.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us on this exploration of the May 11th observation log. Until next time, keep your eyes on the data, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.